And I think that class traders, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because
Yeah.
on one hand, you want people to use the influence and the surplus that they have
Right.
to advocate for causes that will emancipate the working class. You don't just want people to be using their surplus, like buying luxury items and then saying, hey, but also respect the working class. I hope that
Right.
they're well.
I do think that it's really interesting that they, one, have gotten into politics, right? And they're bankrolling their own campaign as well. I do find it interesting that, you know, they haven't like fully denounced everything, right? Like Steyer did quit his company, and that's kind of one of the things that he's running on too, is like, oh, you know, I did run it for 27 years, but I saw the bad that, you know, also came with the good, and so I decided to leave it all and, you know, become a philanthropist. And I'm like, okay, but you're still a billionaire, right? Like you haven't denounced all of your billions. So I'm a little shaky on the class trader when it comes to him.
But I do think that class traders exist. I think that there's truth to the argument of just because you participate in society doesn't mean that you can't critique it. But that sometimes is used as a cop-out for people to be like, well, look, I'm not investing in any working class things because
Yeah.
we need systemic change from the government. So until then, I'm just going to hoard my wealth and like continue to like enrich myself. So I see the nuance in both conversations.
Yeah.
Within the dichotomy of the American political system, progressive activists recognize that there's no moving the Republican Party. They are not in it to actually meet the needs of working class people. Well, Democrats try to capitulate to that when they run for campaigns. They say, hey, we are the party of the working class. We are the party that's against the rich. We're trying to stop the corruption of the Republican Party. We recognize a lot of systemic change needs to happen. Okay, well, that's why activists are protesting at your events, because they want you to actually walk the walk.
Correct.
They don't want it to just be vernacular, or they don't want it to be rhetoric that you say on the campaign trail. They want to see actionable results.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why so many progressive activists fight against centrist Dems,
Yeah.
because they really represent the rot of an opposition party.
Editing Eliana here. Hey guys, before we get into today's episode, I do want to remind you that the best way to support my work, independent journalism, and more episodes like this is to become a paid subscriber on Substack. It's only $8 a month. You can also pay for the full year in advance, and it gives you a little bit of a discount, and that is going to help me continue creating more episodes like the one you see today. And you can also help me on YouTube. If you become a subscriber and you watch every video all the way through, it's going to help me get monetized. So again, I can continue creating episodes like this. Substack gets every single podcast episode in full first. So if you want to see episodes like this in full, very minimal editing, you have to become a subscriber on Substack, and YouTube gets clipped versions of the full episodes if you want something a little bit shorter. But it helps me out so much that you are here, and thank you again for watching.
Thanks for coming on the pod today. I'm so excited to chat with you because we are both progressive political commentators, I would
Very
say, fairly on the lefty of the left.
The radical woke agenda, I think some say. That's like the professional term.
The radical left, of
Yep.
course, yes. So I'm really excited to chat with you because there is so much to talk about. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about why the Dems are fucking crashing out on Hasan Piker.
Yeah.
Why are centrist Dems the worst?
I think it's really difficult for a lot of people because you recognize how futile it is trying to talk to Republicans. There's always this Democrat talking point that like, well, why aren't people who are advocating for Palestine protesting at the Republican National Convention? Or why aren't they in front of the White House right now protesting as Trump enables a genocide? And it's true. Trump is enabling a genocide.
Yes.
But I think the difference is within the dichotomy of the American political system, progressive activists recognize that there's no moving the Republican Party. They are not in it to actually meet the needs of working class people. Well, Democrats try to capitulate to that when they run for campaigns. They say, hey, we are the party of the working class. We are the party that's against the rich. We're trying to stop the corruption of the Republican Party. We recognize a lot of systemic change needs to happen. Okay, well, that's why activists are protesting at your events, because they want you to actually walk the walk.
Correct.
They don't want it to just be vernacular, or they don't want it to be rhetoric that you say on the campaign trail. They want to see actionable results.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why so many progressive activists fight against centrist Dems,
Yeah.
because they really represent the rot of an opposition party. They are
Yes.
all talk. They are all Republicans are the enemy, so just vote for us. We're tired of that strategy. We're
Yeah.
tired of people saying the only alternative is just not Republican. We need more than that. We need actual vision.
Alyssa Slotkin has absolutely gotten under my skin and literally everyone else. She cannot stop putting her foot in her mouth. She is one of the people that has been calling Hasan Piker anti-Semitic, saying that people shouldn't be going on his stream. He's on par with like Nick Fuentes, which is a wild fucking statement.
She's criticizing people like Hasan Piker who are advocating against the mistreatment and dehumanization of Palestinian people and saying that's anti-Semitic. Well, Nick Fuentes is saying there's a Jewish cabal that's running all of the institutions in society, and they are creating a power vacuum where they're sucking in all the... It's crazy to compare the two.
He's got some wild-ass takes.
No.
I don't know how you could compare him with Hasan at all.
It is just wild to me that she's somebody who's willing to go on a show like Bill Maher,
right,
who is consistently talking against the progressive wing of the base, who is agreeing with Republicans, who's saying Donald Trump is not this terrible person that everyone's made him out to be. And while he still will like criticize Trump every now and then, Bill Maher has established himself as, I'm one of the good liberals that you Trump supporters can love. You can see me as somebody who's not going to be Trump derangement syndrome. I actually like a lot of the Trump personality. I met with him. I had dinner with him. He's great. That is like a quote from Bill Maher. And the fact that you're willing to go on that show, but then criticize Dems who see Hasan Piker's massive fucking audience and reach and want to actually garner some of that support. It's crazy to say that that's not useful in the progressive movement.
I know. And then to then say no Democrat should ever go on Hasan's stream because of all of the things he said also around 9/11. We know she used to be a CIA agent. We can only imagine the type of shit she got into while she was at the CIA. And it was, I'm pretty sure it was right around the time or after 9/11 that she did that. So, she's definitely got a chip on her shoulder when it comes to leftist progressives. And, the centrists are corporatists, right? Like, they want to be cozy with the billionaires.
It's also just like a lot of virtue signal politics where it's like, we're not necessarily for a class war because these people have power and influence because they're good at what they do. We just need to stop, like, the overt fascism. We need to stop all of, ICE being in your face and making the highlight reels. That's terrible, which is true, it is. But we're not necessarily against ICE as an institution. It's actually useful to get people out of this country. That's the difference between, like, a moderate Democrat or a centrist Democrat who's basically just a diet Republican versus people who actually want systemic radical change.
I'm not a Hasan stan. I like his politics.
Well, we've talked about him for 15 minutes, so you seem like a big... I'm just kidding.
Only because he's literally on every headline all the time for the last, 3 or 4 weeks. There are certain things that I'm like, brother. So, for instance, the class thing is really getting me now because we're both in California. We are going through, the governor's race, and we've been talking about how, batshit crazy that is. Unfortunately, the most progressive candidate on the Democratic side right now is Tom Steyer, a billionaire. Hasan has all but endorsed Tom Steyer at this point. And there's also, we recently went to San Francisco to cover the debate for Nancy Pelosi's seat. There is a millionaire who is also the most progressive on the Democratic side. So there is a very interesting thing about this class thing. And the only reason I bring that up is because Hasan himself is pretty rich. I mean, I think we can call him rich, right? But he is very much on the eat the rich politics as well. So what is your stance on what we're seeing in terms of this idea of a class traitor? I would say Hasan probably fits into that at this point. Maybe didn't start off that way. Maybe started off very working class and then worked his way up.
I think he's pretty vocal about his past. I don't know this 100%. You can fact check this at home, but he comes from a pretty wealthy family in Turkey. They were part of the political or the wealthy elite. But he's always just had class-based politics because he recognizes, the systemic inequalities that this country perpetuates across the world, not just domestically. And I think that class traders, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because on one hand, you want people to use the influence and the surplus that they have to advocate for causes that will emancipate the working class. You don't just want people to be using their surplus, buying luxury items and then saying, hey, but also respect the working class. I hope that they're well. And I wouldn't say that, Hasan falls in that category. I think that he does put his money where his mouth is. He invests in a lot of either working class causes or nonprofit groups that seek to help people that are actually struggling. But like again, I'm not here to say that everything Hasan does is great or everything
Yeah.
Hasan does is bad. I think that he speaks like a good message that should push people in a further progressive direction. And that's important when building a working class coalition that's actually going to advocate for what's good for working class people instead of just what's good for Democrats or their electability.
Yeah.
But I do think that class traitors exist. I think that there's truth to the argument of just because you participate in society doesn't mean that you can't critique it. But that sometimes is used as a cop-out for people to be like, well, look, I'm not investing in any working class things because
Yeah.
we need systemic change from the government. So until then, I'm just going to hoard my wealth and like continue to like enrich myself. So I see the nuance in both conversations.
Yeah.
When there is like revolutionary cause, you're going to need people who are willing to jump on board with that. You need leftists that are working in insurance. You need leftist accountants. You need leftists in all aspects of society.
Yeah.
And so I think that like choosing not to participate in areas of society does a disservice to leftists who are trying to infiltrate from within, because I don't think that we're going to change the system from within with like just good leftists being in those situations.
Right.
But I think when you build the class consciousness and the anger and the sentiment that's necessary for revolutionary change, you're going to need people in those areas of society that are going to join that side in order
Right.
to topple it all down.
Yeah.
Because if you want to start from scratch, you're going to need to be able to get rid of what's current. And you can't do that unless you have people that are influential that are going to help do that.
Okay, so when it comes to, let's go back to Tom Steyer being a billionaire, funding his own campaign to the tune of $100 million plus dollars, not taking corporate money, PAC money, admirable, but he wouldn't be able to spend $100 million on a campaign if he didn't have it, right?
Yeah.
And it also, I think a lot of critics would say, well, that $100 million, he could have spent that on, you know, in a couple different organizations to like fight hunger, to give free meals to children,
Yeah.
you know, in schools. Like, what do you think about the people who are like, oh, it's good and great that he thinks he's a class traitor, but is he actually, because he could have used that $100 million for something else?
Yeah, I think when I approach politics, especially electoral politics, I have two different ways in which my worldview helps me interpret what's happening.
Yeah.
So I have the ideological lens, which is I'm very much in favor of working class people emancipating themselves.
Yeah.
For too long, we've had an oligarchic class that have subjugated people to terrible working conditions
Yep.
at the expense of their own health and well-being. And that is only to further perpetuate a profit-making system that enriches a very small group of people who actually control society. That anger is real.
Yep.
And that's probably how I look at most things in society from a critical lens. Because I think it's important that you need to call out power and authority when you see it. And then I have an electoral lens where I'm looking at, okay, viability. If I'm looking at all of the options objectively, removing that ideological stance, how am I supposed to measure what's the potential of this person getting into office?
Yeah.
And I have to be measured in that because I've been let down before.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's paid attention to politics for more than a decade has been let down unless they are a political shill.
Many times.
John Fetterman postured himself as very progressive during the 2022 midterm elections. He's probably one of the
He's been the worst.
senators,
Yes.
like in the entire Senate. Not
Literally.
only just like joining sides with Republicans, but genocidal rhetoric,
Yes.
literally dehumanizing some of the most vulnerable people in society. Tom Steyer, right? So if we're looking at his entire career, he built most of his money investing in terrible things. Private prisons.
Yeah.
He invested in
ICE detention
subjugating
centers.
workers, ICE detention centers. Those are terrible things.
Yeah.
He's since then apologized for that. He's also donated a lot of money towards actual working class. Like he's built public banks that actually give advantageous loans to people that are working class or low income. That's fucking sick.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good and bad. Like I always look at it, Michael Brooks is a big inspiration of mine. And he has a quote that I always utilize in having these conversations. You need to be ruthless to institutions, but kind to people. So I never will grade somebody based on their own internal like morality. I don't know people on an individual level. And I go as far, people call me a liberal shill here. Like, I don't give a fuck whether Jeff Bezos is a good person or not. I don't know him personally. But what I do know is we have a system that enables a person like that to gain such a substantial amount of influence and wealth
Yes.
that it ruins our ability to actually advocate for ourselves. So that is a terrible system. And I'm ruthless to that system. And I don't give a fuck if Jeff Bezos is a good dad or a good grandpa or whatever. He might be like great to his family. I really don't give a fuck about that. I care about the system that enabled him to get that level of wealth. I don't
Right.
think that should exist. I don't think he should exist as a billionaire. So I look at the same thing with Tom Steyer, right? Like, he might have done a lot of great with his money. I still think that we have a system that enabled him to get to that level that is not
Correct.
okay.
The reason I bring up class traders is because there is again, that interesting conversation between what their politics are, right? Like the things that they want to push for are seemingly very, very progressive. They're definitely on par with leftist progressive politics, even if they're a little shaky on things like Zionism. But I kind of have to agree a little bit on, why a billionaire is kind of refusing to spend that money, that level of money, right? Because $133 million is literally unfathomable to me. That one, he would even have that type of money, and then two, to spend it on a campaign rather than do grassroots campaigning, right? Like a billionaire could do grassroots campaigning if he really felt confident in his progressive politics. I think that would have been a better way to go. And whatever he was not able to make up with in terms of that grassroots funding, he could have funded it himself, right?
There's also
but to fund the whole thing yourself,
there's justification for skepticism as well, just because you can say a lot of things with populist rhetoric that you don't deliver on. I mean, that's the same thing we were talking about with John Fetterman. Like,
right.
This was a guy who was saying I was one of the most progressive people running, right, and he became a piece of shit. Like,
and that's kind of what people are waiting to see in terms of Mamdani, right? Like, ran very leftist progressive politics, very socialist politics, and people are like kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, right? Like, oh, he's not going to be able to get everything done. We're kind of waiting, right? His first 100 days just passed. He got a lot fucking done.
I'm very impressed by what he's done.
Me
I can't lie. Like, obviously, I'm going to criticize things because I'm not like, I don't think we should ever cheerlead politicians. We should always be critical. But
politicians are not celebrities.
Yeah, exactly. But I like a lot of what he's done. I think that
same.
he's very much prioritized tenants in New York, which is fucking incredible, especially for a state or a city that focuses so much on renters, or has so much renters. We need someone like that in LA. Shout out Ray Huang. You guys should check her out. But I mean, I think that Steyer does have a record of being progressive. I don't think that this is a new switch up where suddenly he wants to be progressive because he's running for governor. So I think that we do kind of have to wait and see what happens. I'm going to make a prediction here. I think he's going to win. I do think he's going to win.
By how much?
I don't know.
Let's throw $100 on it.
I think he's going to win. I think it's going to be him and Hilton. I think those are the two candidates that are going to be in the general.
In terms of class traders, I have been reading a lot of Kropotkin. I'm sure you know who that is. Author of the
Radical Anarchist.
I know. Author of Mutual Aid. Also was a class trader. He was a part of royalty in Russia. Decided to denounce royalty. Got arrested, deported. Fucked around with the anarchists for a while, and the communists. And it really is interesting to me, this concept of a class trader, because I think, one, we need more of them, obviously, especially in a capitalist society. We need people who have seen that world and understand how it operates so that they can tell the rest of us how to topple it down, basically. Like, how do we combat this system that is very, autocracy-based? And I also think the class traders of today, or the ones that we would consider a class trader of today, are not the same as like a Kropotkin, right? Because he totally denounced royalty. He had no money when he died. And he could have, right? Like, he could have kept a lot of the, ties that he had in terms of that. He chose to denounce all of it. So why do we think the class traders of today are still very, very wealthy, like will not, totally get rid of their money? And yet, people still consider them to be, on the trader side.
We are in an environment where from the moment we are born, we are indoctrinated with marketing, advertisement, and this idea that you are inches away from losing everything. There's a reason why homelessness isn't solved. Right. It's used as a warning to people who step out of line. That could be you. If you don't do your job in society, you continue to work your 40-hour work week, you need to make sure that you are making profit for some sort of shareholder.
Yes.
And if you don't do that, that's what could happen to you. And I think that scares a lot of people. And I think that it builds this insecurity of, one, financial struggle, to where people feel like, hey, I might be not on board with this whole capitalism thing, but there's no way in hell I'm going to let myself be at risk of falling into like these social ills or being socially ostracized from society.
Right.
And I think that's a difference with like, you know, the 1800s Kropotkin, who even if like
Yeah.
not being super wealthy means that you have bad living conditions, there's still a sense of community that I think like people back then identified with their fellow serf. They identified
Yes.
with their fellow peasant.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They went to church every single day, like Sunday of the week, and
Yeah.
they ate dinner with each other. There was communal living. There was a sense of community.
Yes.
And I think we're lost from that because our neoliberal capitalist world has alienated people so much to the point that we're always looking for like individual improvement. And as long as I can get a better car, or maybe if I upgrade what my living situation looks like,
Yeah.
or I get this thing that I've been thinking about getting for so long, it builds like this sense of like I'm steadily improving in society.
Right.
People don't want to lose that. I think
Yeah.
it creates a lot of insecurity for people.
Yeah.
So to me, that could be like one of the reasons why people could be in high positions of wealth that agree with progressive politics, but are really terrified about like giving up what they have.
Yes.
Because they either came from poverty and they know how bad it is and they don't want to go back, or they've never came from poverty and they're terrified of what it could potentially be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. As you were talking, it reminded me of the conversation that people were having in terms of Bernie Sanders. He was very much like very working class, only took the, you know, the paycheck that he got from, you know, being a senator. And then he wrote a book. It was massively successful. His tax return said he gained like $1.5 million. And then a lot of people said, well, he's no longer one of us because now he's rich, right? Even though very progressive politics, a long record of this, right? Obviously, we have a lot of smoke for him in terms of being a liberal Zionist. We get that. But I always found that to be a little bit trippy, right? Because like just because, you know, he found success by writing a book, right? Like nobody was exploited when he made that $1.5 million. Nobody got exploited, guys. Like maybe the trees that had to be made, you know, to print the book. So I always found that really interesting. But when it comes to somebody like Shoykat Chakrabarti, right? Or Mr. Steyer, I do think that it's really interesting that they, one, have gotten into politics, right? When they could totally influence it without running a campaign.
Yeah.
And they know that they can, and they've seen it happen. And they're bankrolling their own campaign as well. I do find it interesting that, you know, they haven't like fully denounced everything, right? Like Steyer did quit his company, and that's kind of one of the things that he's running on too, is like, oh, you know, I did run it for 27 years, but I saw the bad that, you know, also came with the good, and so I decided to leave it all and, you know, become a philanthropist. And I'm like, okay, but you're still a billionaire, right? Like you haven't denounced all of your billions. So I'm a little shaky on the class traitor when it comes to him.
It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Like, I think that we need people in different levels of influence. I think that we need people in different echelons of society.
Yeah.
The more that we have people that are powerful and influential, that are espousing the same type of revolutionary mindset and leftist framework, the more that we actually succeed in building that coalition. Because there's a lot of people who look up to people of like high wealth and high status as successful people in society.
Right.
And so often, leftism is lauded as this envious ideology. It is about people who are jealous of rich people and who want more than what they deserve, and they don't want to work ever, and they just want all this and all that.
Which is not true.
Right. Well, obviously, I mean,
Yeah.
leftists will know that's not true. But for somebody who is politically homeless and doesn't
Yes.
really understand looking at things from historical dialecticism, or material dialecticism, it is important that people recognize that even if somebody has achieved this wealth status, or they've won the game of capitalism, or they've succeeded, they want to hear from those people that the system is flawed. And who's more of a credible source than somebody who's actually beaten the system, who said, like, you know, I'm one of the lucky few, I'm part of the survivorship bias,
Right.
but I recognize this system is fucked up.
Yeah.
And Steyer is not a socialist. I'm not pointing at him as that.
Right.
I'm more so talking about just people who get to high levels of wealth
Yeah.
and decide to say this is not okay, this is
Right.
not right, like a Frederick Engels,
And-
or like a Kropotkin,
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
a Hasan Piker.
Right.
So Tom, famously, progressives are very pro-billionaire. They're very like in favor of wealthy
I've
interests.
noticed that it's really propelling my campaign.
But you know, for you as someone who is a billionaire who seems to have the most progressive platform out of any other gubernatorial candidate, how can you guarantee that billionaires who are not as progressive as you will actually pay their fair share instead of skirting?
So, let me say this. I know that the billionaires like me aren't paying enough. I know the big corporations aren't paying enough. We are the richest state in the richest country in the history of the world, and we have the highest poverty rate in the United States of America, and most Californians can't make rent. Most Californians cannot make the numbers work at the end of the month. So let me say something else. I know that, it's funny. I was in a debate last night. I can't remember, it was on CBS. But anyway, I'm on this debate, and Kat and I go to have dinner with my brother. And I say, Jim, what do you think of the debate? And he goes, I watched the basketball game. So let me say, I'm aware that some of you might have missed the debate. But in answer to this question, they did this thing that I hate, which is a lightning round, which is yes or no. Yes or no. And here's the yes or no. Billionaire tax, yes or no? No. 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 Me. Yes. No. No. One person said yes. And so in answer to your question, it's crazy because I am a billionaire, but I'm the billionaire who wants billionaires like me to pay more. I'm the person who wants single payer and will go to the mat for it. I'm the person who wants to take on the electric monopolies and cut the cost by 25%. I'm the person who's going to take on the big oil companies, and they're spending tens of millions to stop me. So I always say, I'm the only billionaire on the ballot, but I'm not the only billionaire in this race. The billionaires are behind every other candidate but me.